for and is just.
The February 24th council meeting be called to order. Would you please stand for the pledge of allegiance and a moment of silence?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. First item on the agenda will be approval of the minutes from the February the 10th meeting.
Move to approve the minutes from February 10th, 2020.
Second.
It has been moved and second to approve the minutes. Would the clerk please call the roll?
Shriver?
Yes.
Stites?
Stay.
Adams?
Yes.
Cahar?
Yes.
Malott?
Yes.
Next item will be statement of the bills paid in the amount of $235,711.48.
Mr. Mayor, make a motion, we approve the statement of bills for $235,711.48.
Second.
It has been moved and second to approve the statement of the bills paid. Would the clerk please call the roll?
Shriver?
Yes.
Stites?
Yes.
Adams?
Yes.
Cahar?
Yes.
Malott?
Yes.
Next item on the agenda will be requests or comments from the public. There being none. Next item will be consider authorizing the extension of the existing service contract with White Lawn and Landscape for mowing services at the Edwardsville Cemetery and City Hall for this 2020 season.
Mr. Mayor, members of council, what's before you is the request from White Lawn Landscape, who is our current mowing contractor for the Edwardsville Cemetery, to extend their current agreement for the final year. In 2017, the city council approved a mowing contract with White Lawn Landscape for mowing services at the cemetery. At the time, it was eligible for renewal for 3 years. In 2018, the contract was renewed for a 5% increase in the unit cost. The city council again renewed the contract in 2019 with no unit increases at that time. And White Lawn Landscape is asking that it's renewed for the final time for the 2020 season at a 0% increase for the 2019 rates. Really, the only change to the current agreement is is really not so much their request, but as a collaboration between us and White, is to add mowing services for Edwardsville, the space around Edwardsville City Hall, as well as the vacant north parcel whenever vegetation is established up there. White's performed some services for us, mowing around City Hall at the tail end of last year, and reviewing that as a figure from last year, moving to a contracted solution was something that the staff recommended. So the action would be to renew the service for the 2020 mowing season at the Edwardsville Cemetery at no increases to the unit prices, and to add mowing services for the Edwardsville City Hall space.
Could you tell me about how much extra it would cost for the City Hall and North Parcel?
So the 2020 budget assumed that we would be adding a contracted solution at about $6,000, a little over $6,000 per year for that. So what it comes out to is 31 different mows. So, and that includes the entire area. If there's 31 mows of the entire area, obviously there's not going to be 31 mows of that north parcel because vegetation is probably not going to be established for it to have 31 mows. So I imagine it'll be somewhere a little bit less than that 6,000.
And is that something that potentially the person we're hiring could do?
Well, what the person we're hiring is going to be doing that is going to impact this at all is, so last year we had 27 mows at the cemetery, and then in addition to that, we had 4 mows for kind of a wooded area, so picking up sticks and then mowing in that area, as well as some hourly work like grave restoration and just leaf pickup, this and that. I expect some of those costs on that end to come down. So probably our new person is going to be doing the 4 or 5 times a year that we mow that wooded area and do the leaf pickups and stick pickups, and all the grave restoration will probably all that either on the staff or a separate contract solution once we move to once the cemetery board, whatever makeup that is, comes to moves forward on a concept as far as how to handle grave restoration moving forward. So I don't imagine White could be doing that work in 2020. So if we see any savings from 2019 to 2020 as far as the cemetery goes, or this contract goes, it'll probably be in those areas.
Okay. Well, I was just wondering if they're gonna be a full-time person and part of their job description is maintaining the public spaces
Mhm.
of our city, if that might save us, you know, a few $1,000s and having that full-time position, take that over as soon as they're hired. I'd kinda like to see maybe that adjustment. I don't know if everybody else would be on the same page.
I think part of it is just also time, right? So White's being a landscape company with the equipment and everything can come and do and be done with it. And so that person can focus on the, so to speak, the smaller things that maybe, you know, maintaining over at the community center, around the community center, the beds and things like that. Or they're also
Do
going
you
to
think
still
they'll
be
have
doing
40
work.
hours a week? I mean, do you think that'll take 40 hours a week?
40.
Yeah.
I mean, I think there's plenty of work that that person will be engaged in, whether it's at the cemetery, whether it's in the parks, whether it's in public rights of way, et cetera. I think we've always looked at that, the use of a contractor in this, they can come in and knock this out in 2 hours.
Yeah,
Because they
right.
can bring 3 or 4 people and all the equipment with it, where we're gonna put a person on a mower and they're gonna spend most of the day to mow it, or, you know, 4 to 6 hours to mow it. I think when it gets down to use of personnel, it's a better option. Now, if we find that that's not the case, this is a unit price contract, so if we don't have them mow it, then there's not a minimum that, hey, they get paid for 20, 31 mows or 20 regardless. So as we get into that, if we think that our staffing is such that it does make more sense, then we can transition that to them. Right now, I think this is our best option for mowing this open kind of areas like this. And so we can focus on the parks and maybe other, what I would call higher improved areas, right? So staying on top of those things, mowing the trails, right-of-way mowings, things like that are quite honestly harder to contract out to a mowing contractor.
From
That's our
talking
reason.
with White's, they, just based on what they already did at the end of last year in the area that they have mowing and then the addition of the north area, they think between 1.5 hours to 2 hours, they'll be able to knock out this entire.
Yeah, it's more like what I was.
And like Mike said, we're not guaranteeing them 31 mows every season. This is just locking them into that rate
Okay.
as we move forward.
Well, what I would say is, if it's the difference of somebody coming in and mowing and that, having that person, our staff person available to pick up trash where we need it, where White isn't going to pick up trash, I would rather see us go ahead and contract out the mowing where we can have someone out there that will be picking up trash where we definitely need it.
And have you guys been pretty satisfied with their service in the last few years?
We have, and so what we would also include, we started doing last year, is whatever form the cemetery board ends up taking by the end of this meeting, we'll do a preseason walkthrough with members who are able to make for that they begin mowing in, you know, whenever they need to, typically early April, so we'll probably schedule a preseason walkthrough, middle of March. We'll keep you guys all updated as to when that gets scheduled as well. But by and large, yes, we've been pretty satisfied with that.
And I mean, they are a local company, they are a local Edwardsville company as well. Not the only, thing, but they are a local company, which I think sometimes helps just in the communications and interactions.
Absolutely.
Mr. Mayor, make a motion that we authorize the extension of the existing contract with White Lawn and Landscape for the stated prices at no increase for the 2020 season.
Second.
It has been moved and seconded to authorize the extension of the existing service contract with White Lawn and Landscape for mowing service in Edwardsville Cemetery and City Hall for the 2020 with the prices quoted. Would the clerk please call roll?
Shriver?
Yes.
Stites?
Yes.
Adams?
Yes.
Cahar?
Yes.
Malott?
Yes.
We have 2 guests here tonight, and we will start off with Jim Walters, our commissioner from the 7th District. Jim, thank you for coming.
Well, thank you for the invitation. It's been a while since I've been here.
Yeah.
For you who don't know me, I consider myself having grown up in Edwardsville. I lived here since between the time I was about 12 all thought I would just give you an overview of what I thought might be happening of consequence in this coming year. I was just talking to Greg. I think 2020 is going to be a really great year for our county. I'll go through some of the projects that I think you're probably familiar with. You've heard about them, but a lot of them should be starting this year. First is the Scaluzzo's warehouse food distribution facility on the south half of the Indian Springs development area. We've been talking about that for a long time. The development agreement calls for them to start this spring with construction of the first phase, which is the warehouse, followed shortly after that by an office building. The north half of that parcel is retail and other service areas that are still to be determined, but it's about a 5-year phased project. So we're very confident that that's going to actually start construction here this spring. Moving a little bit west, the big development at Turner Diagonal and I-70 will start this year. You're familiar with those long access ramps to Turner Diagonal and I-70. Those are going to be removed by the state, and a conventional intersection will be placed at that location, which frees up dozens and dozens of acres for development. The state has sold that property to a local developer, and they want to build probably a 10-year build out of industrial and commercial distribution facilities there. The first 2 buildings they are hopefully going to have open to coincide with the completion of that interchange. So that will be, construction will start this year and potentially in 2021 be ready to go. A little bit further out west, tomorrow we're going to have a press conference introducing the new owner of the T-Bones. That's good news for us. The new owner, Mark Brandmeier, is a prominent local businessman who wants to make the T-Bones into a even more successful operation. He's got a lot of plans to make personal investments in the facility, to make it more of a year-round entertainment destination. And like I said, the official closing was this week, but the official unveiling of an introduction of him to our community will be tomorrow. So baseball will continue. Very important to the western part of our county to have those, a couple 100,000 people visit on an annual basis. A little further west, we believe that the American Royal will actually start construction this summer. That project is about a $200 million investment by the American Royal in our county. And obviously, we've been talking about this for some time. There was an initial approval. They needed to do some fundraising. I think they need to do some more fundraising. And I think they are ready to start construction this summer. Fingers crossed. There is one potential snag, and that is if the bonds are not sold by July 1st, we are depending on the state to extend the STAR bond legislation. So I think we're trying to work on a track with the American Royal that potentially allows the bonds to be sold this year, or excuse me, by July 1st. If not, we're also working with the state to try to extend that the legislation. So anything you can do, if you talk to any of your legislators, put in a good word for that. I haven't mentioned the Edwardsville development, the Hard Rock. Everybody's looking forward to that. We're looking forward to the Bonner Springs development, Bonner Crossing, and hopefully all of those projects will go forward. And one that we are still working on and hope someday we'll be able to turn around is the Schlitterbahn development, which is a little bit of a vacuum in that particular part of the county. county, so if that can be turned around, that will be another home run for us. So those are some of the things that I really think are imminent. Greg probably has more projects that he's working on that are probably further down the line, but I think he's bullish on our county, just on those projects that I've mentioned. I'm pretty bullish on our county too. So that's kind of an overview of some of the bigger projects that I think will be happening this year. One thing I might mention, sort of from a county standpoint, we're completing construction on our juvenile detention facility this year. And for background, there was a time in this county that we had a county jail, we had a Kansas City jail, and we had a juvenile detention facility. And the juvenile detention facility was substandard, and eventually it was forced to be closed. The city jail was a substandard facility, and it was forced to be closed. When both of those events happened, for whatever reason, they decided to just move the city jail residents and the juvenile residents into the county jail. That's a maximum security detention facility, and it probably was never a really good idea to move juveniles there. So we have been working for the last few years to try to figure out a way to get away from that. So, and we did. We had been sending out, calling it farming out so many prisoners because of inadequate space in the county jail, that we were able to figure out a way to fund a new juvenile facility with cost savings from farm outs of these county jail residents. The situation was we were taking a pod of our county jail for a few juveniles where we could have a substantial number of county inmates there. So with some creative book work, we were able to free up enough money to build a new juvenile detention facility with savings from those farm expenses, and that building will be built, or will be open this year. And it'll put the county back to where it needed to be. There were a lot of complications that were created when we had the juveniles into that facility, because you have to have absolute separation, and it really caused some logistical challenges. So moving the juveniles out into a more residential style detention facility where they can hopefully get back on course. So that's a big improvement from strictly from a county expenditure standpoint. With that, those are. Oh, I can't stop without mentioning the quiet zone.
Or you were gonna get out. You might as well come out with it.
The train started with you.
Well, first, I want to thank the city of Edwardsville for their cooperation on that. It's been a good partnership. I've been in office 6 years, and in my second month, I started working on the quiet zone with Bob Roddy, who was the county engineer at that time. And we did studies and we delayed it. It's been, yes, all along, but it's been 6 years that we've been working on this quiet zone. And I understand that the railroad drags its feet, and they don't like quiet zones, even though you cannot establish a quiet zone unless you improve the overall safety of the zone. So it's been a challenge. My latest update is that we had always planned for the railroad to do its work first, then we would come along and do the public improvements later. The last update I got from our staff is that we are going to go ahead with the public improvements ahead of the railroad. And hopefully, we can shorten the actual completion date of the overall project by doing so. Maybe not the most efficient way to do it. It's probably a little bit more risk financially, but potentially could get the thing going a little bit ahead of time. As I understand it, we're still waiting for final comments from the railroad on our detailed plans, which we submitted 4 months ago. If you can push the railroad, please do. So with that, I'd be glad to answer any comments or any questions that I could add anything to.
One of the things I was gonna bring up that is in your district that just occurred was the Menards.
Yes.
And was there over the weekend, and amazing how many Wyandotte County, Western Wyandotte County folks that I know were in there on Sunday. And just busy place. And if you haven't been to Menards, it's quite interesting because you can buy anything from a toothbrush to motor oil to a doorknob to a bug zapper. I mean, it's everything is in there. So very nice, clean, new facility, and glad to have that.
Yeah,
So
we've been looking forward to that for a long time. If you need to buy a 2-before and a slab of bacon at the same time, you can do it.
You mentioned about the Schlitterbahn revitalization. Is there anything in the works? Is there a timeline, or would the present owners plan to do anything?
They'd like to sell, and there's nothing that I can share with you that I know.
So the park won't be open?
Park, we're not planning the park in open
Jim, I just wanted to comment on the silent crossings, and I do appreciate your efforts on that
shape. Thank you.
with the county, and I've been the guy that's been kind of pushing that down here. And
Well, appreciate the
I know it echoes
cooperation.
up through Lake Forest too, because sometimes you have to stop weddings when those trains go by. I appreciate the effort that you've done on that.
Thank you.
I might just add relative to the quiet zone, just from our side of it, is that, and we've worked with the public works staff quite a bit. We were able to make some, as you know, as part of the quiet zone as it relates to 4th Street, we agreed collectively that if we're gonna do it, it made sense to go from K32 down to where the curb and gutter section stops. We curb and gutter and update the road while we're already out there. And in part of that, we were able to shift some of the stormwater and things like that, where the county, saved some money in the overall project. They were able to then make improvements that wouldn't have probably been made, but it's still less expense for the overall projects, less for the city, less for the county. We have started on our side all of the, so to speak, right-of-way needs. It's mainly temporary construction easements, so everything relatively in the road are temporary construction easements. We have, I think, one permanent drainage easement, which we've already spoke to the property owner. We have some sidewalk that technically is not in the right-of-way now, so up by the bank Midwest, there's 2 feet of the sidewalk that technically is outside the right-of-way, so we're just cleaning up that. So through this partnership, we're also able to make improvements to the public infrastructure outside of what the railroad and the county is doing. I think it's a good option. But just so you all know, we sent out letters to all those property owners last week to get the temporary construction easements. Most of them are 5 feet. They're 5 feet by whatever the width of the lot is, and it's really just we rebuild the sidewalks. So all those sidewalks is part of the project. So the sidewalks will be proper, they'll be ADA accessible, they'll be able to cross the railroad track appropriately, those kind of things. But part of the challenge, at least what I ask. There've been change in numbers, et cetera, through this process, so. I do appreciate what the public works staff has been doing to try to keep it moving, and Olson Associates is the engineers on it, and I spoke to them a couple hours ago.
Okay, great.
Commissioner Walters, I appreciate you coming, and I wish we could do this like once a quarter. Just have you come down, kind of give us updates on what's going on in the
I
county.
live about 5 minutes away, so it wouldn't be a problem.
Well, it'd be really good if you would.
Sure.
So that our citizens, when they view our meetings and so forth, that they can see kind of what the county and KCK is doing out towards this end, and the value that they bring to the citizens of our area. So I really appreciate it. I would really like to have more of a regular, consistent update on things.
No problem from my side.
Yeah, what we'll do is, we'll have Zach get in touch with you and try to set up a schedule
All right.
for a quarterly update, so. But
Perfect.
we do appreciate you coming out, really do. Thank you for all the information.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, our next guest is Greg Kindle from the WYEDC Economic Development Council, who's going to give us an update from his perspective. Greg, thank you.
Mayor, council, staff, thank you again for having me come make a sort of an annual presentation, but like Commissioner, I'm happy to come back and talk about specific projects or policies or any number of things. I've got about 10, 12 slides I thought I'd run through, just going to give you an overview of where we are. So, as you all know, our mission essentially is to grow the county economy. So we are a county-wide organization. When projects come into the community, we are generally agnostic in terms of where they go. We submit as many sites and buildings as we have available to us in the community, and we let the client choose the sites or the buildings that they want to go to, and then we just figure it out and put those together. We've been very successful here in Edwardsville because of your all's team, which we appreciate very much, Michael, and we work with Dave Nobby quite a bit. It's an easy team to work with. I've made that comment many times, but I cannot thank you all enough for how well you all work with projects in general. So I'll talk specifically about some projects, but I just think it's important for you all to know, for citizens in general to know that you all have been able to do projects consistently because you're just really easy to work with, and appreciate you're very consistent in how you apply your policies. So again, thank you. In terms of being able to task with growing the economy, we have to have product, we have to have sites, but we have to have a team and policies that make that work. So that can't be overstated. The 4 key areas: the project attraction side is always the side that captures all the news headlines, but most of our 4.5 team members, so we get 4.5 folks on staff, 2.5 of those are dedicated to expansion and retention. So we spend a lot of time making calls on existing companies and trying to make sure we can figure out what they need. Most recently, I think it was a pothole at 98th Street, and so we worked with the city staff to say, hey, this is a response that we're getting from folks in the industrial park. Second one is, of course, retention expansion side, and then we spend a lot of time marketing. For the most part, we are walking, talking, marketing folks, so we spend a lot of time one-on-one. We spend a lot of time in smaller group meetings. We travel to where we're needed to go. So this week I'll go to Philadelphia to meet with a client that's looking at coming into the community. We travel based on the client's needs, but we'll meet them just about anywhere they want to meet at. And then the last one is workforce solutions. And as you all know, we've spent more and more time on the workforce side to make sure that our existing companies in particular, it started as a retention expansion piece of it, but in order to help our companies expand, they had to find more workers. Today, this is all part of everything we do. It's integrated into our attraction efforts, it's integrated into our retention and expansion, maintaining databases of where wages are in each of the industry sets, trying to help our companies understand why they're having significant churn, where they can look for additional employees, finding new relationships. So we started one around faith-based initiatives so that we can engage more of our faith organizations to help us find more people that might need better jobs. So it's been a lot of time on workforce now. This is our board. Yours truly, Mayor Taggart is a member of our board, has been from, not the entire time we've been around, but a lot of it. Long time. So this is our board. Tiffany Stovall is our new chair. She's with Kansas Manufacturing Solutions. But this is the crowd I run with and help guide our policies at the EDC. And then, as you all know, we're public-private. So we're about 50-50 public-private funding. We have about 105 public and private investors. We have a contractual relationship with the Unified Government, you all, Bonner Springs, Board of Public Utilities, and then a whole host of folks. You're probably noticing as well on there more and more workforce-related type folks as well, who are looking to us to make sure that we help drive that workforce piece of it.
When did the United Way join in that capacity? When I saw that, I hadn't seen it.
The United Way has been an investor of the EDC for many years, actually, but recently the funds that come to us around workforce solutions is tied through them. So they aggregate funding, some of it through the Unified Government in a match. Wyandotte Health Foundation is a part of that, and then some additional funding. And so that's all now running through their process, outcomes-based funding, essentially. They're set up to do just that kind of work. So that's why they've been elevated. Results, these are the last 10 years. As you can tell, it's great. And we look at this as a trend, right? So we no longer just look at capital investment and job creation and the number of square feet leased or under development. Those are all great trend lines. We want them pointing in the right direction, and our goal is about $400 million every year. So our goal starting January 1 is, again, starting from zero and trying to point towards $400 million in new investment coming in. But of course, that new investment has to translate into folks within the community also having increased wealth. And so we have really expanded that towards raising the median household income, which I'll talk a little more about here in a second. But as a trend, we've been doing very, very well. That $932 million, that was the year that General Motors did the $600 million project. So it skews it just a little bit, but we've been tracking in that $400 to $600 million the last several years. This year, as the Commissioner noted, looks to be a pretty phenomenal year based on what we see in the pipeline. In terms of attractions, so this is a map that's always sort of changing, but this gives you an idea of the sites that we're kind of looking at. These are just the larger sites. It doesn't necessarily mean they're all on here. There's certainly a lot of smaller sites on here, but I think it helps to kind of see where Edwardsville fits within this overall scope of sites and locations. We used to have a lot of locations in the Edwardsville Industrial Park. We're really down to one site that we were looking at for a project not all that long ago. And then you've got some land out here, Site 9 as we call it, the K-32 assemblage. And then now you start seeing more of that product moving to the north, which is now looking more at sort of retail, mixed use, areas along Riverview running east and west. So you'll see the Bosich property, I think I've got listed up there. You got Compass Business Park, which I know is in Bonner, that impacts you all quite a little bit as well. And then we start really looking at 435 and Kansas Avenue, which I'll talk to here in a second. This gives you some idea of where our future is, where we have challenges based on topography, where we don't have infrastructure. So that's one of our big challenges at 435 in Kansas, is the lack of infrastructure. And then I'll get into this in a second, but how do we then connect it back to the north? And how do we connect Riverview back and forth to east and west? That infrastructure piece is becoming a bit of a challenge for us.
When you're talking connecting Riverview, you're talking about between 98th and 94th, correct?
Absolutely. Just that one section.
Because that's the only place that it doesn't.
Well,
I mean, unless you go.
The other challenge is really choosing where do you get north and south connection back to the north, to Riverview, down to Kansas and 435. And then what section of Riverview, is going to get improved, right? It needs improvement. In order to really drive the kind of development that you all want, it's going to have to be improved. And then we have to figure out whether it's 102nd or 94th, 98th, how are you get that north-south connection so we can drive ultimate long-term development.
Just for reference, in the KC 2050 plan, which is the long-range transportation plan that's going through kind of its final pieces there, one of the projects we put in overall was Riverview, really all the way from Turner Diagonal to the county line, as far as a corridor that long-term, right? It's not a today or tomorrow, but it's a corridor. How do we connect along there? Not unlike how State Avenue serves north of the interstate, right? So how would Riverview as a corridor long-term work to move people east and west, separate from the freeway potentially for, we hear a lot about what's going on at Turner Diagonal. We know about the Amazon project. We know what's happening, relative to our community with the hotel, with the Compass Commodity. Obviously parts of it have a higher priority than others, but overall, and I think that's one of the projects that rated in the medium regional, right? Because that plan's about regional transportation, not just a small or local sector. So I think that as time has gone on, Riverview continues to take a higher priority in the planning processes than it did 10, 20, 50 years ago.
There's a lot of underutilized property along Riverview.
And I won't take, we can give rabbit trails too much on this, but in speaking to just our community and people who live in Edwardsville, they like separation between Kansas City, Kansas and Edwardsville.
Right.
We've had several pursuits, police pursuits on Riverview, and that would just increase, in my opinion, crime and pursuits. Whereas we have already connecting streets with I-70, State Avenue, K-32, we have a lot of connectability already. So I personally think that it might be jumping the gun on that. I know it's a 2050, but as we get closer, I don't know if that's on board with our, might be more on development, but as far as just the folks who live here in Edwardsville, that's not on the polls that I've seen.
That's good to know, because if Michael is directing us to seek out retail development along the retail corridor, along that Riverview corridor, and we don't have good consensus about whether there'll be streets to handle that, to meet the needs of the retail market, that will have an impact for whether you bring in multifamily, the retail, or any other future development. So it's good to know that is why we have these updates and try to make sure we start having some conversation. We've updated this map on a regular basis. One time we've had over 1,500 acres, about 2,000 acres. Right now we're kind of looking at about 1,000 acres that we know of. It work comes into play on a fairly regular basis. Just gives you a feel for kind of where things are sliding. The American Royal logo, I'm not sure why it popped up there, but it's down in that red spot. The Menards is on there. You've got Fairfield Inn coming in over by the Pinnacle and Freddy's. Of course, you got your Ross project here at Hard Rock. We still have sort of the site plan we worked out a long time ago around some sort of flex use on the Compass site, as well as residential and commercial development there at 110th and Riverview. But at least gives you some idea of kind of where we're still looking, and it all depends on what projects come in. Tomorrow somebody could come in and say, we really want to do this right here, and we'd have a live project and have to make a determination. So things change pretty rapidly, particularly around these mixed-use projects. So in terms of right here, so I really wanted to spend more of my time on this piece of just to kind of talk about our current focus here in Edwardsville, of course, getting the Hard Rock project, but it's not just about the Hard Rock project, right? It's working with Cadence Real Estate on the out parcels, making sure we understand what are those out parcels, what's the pricing. We've just seen the marketing materials. We've got a meeting with them, I think, next week to start talking about who we'd like to see come in. There's a nice list of retailers and commercial projects that we think would make a good fit for this location, primarily on the east side. The west side, I think, will take care of it in certain ways. The east side, we're really trying to work on the Hard Rock out parcels. We really have not been able to market that site in the way that we would prefer, because until we actually had final plans and dirt moving, we're really not getting the attention of developers who have lots of locations to go throughout the market. We're still a heavily retailed market. And frankly, if we won all the projects that I'd ever went after when it came to retailers, I'd have a lot of empty boxes. Because a lot of retailers that we've gone after over the last 8 years are no longer viable, sustainable retailers. So it's definitely much more challenging to find those projects that you think will last for the long haul. The downtown City Hall complex can't go without saying, thank you all for taking control of this area and reinvesting in this area. It makes a big difference, and that will help in just bringing those projects together. You all have done a nice job with that. Magna Americas, that's the project that, it's 6 acres. It's really the last 6 acres that was easy to develop, and we've kind of all waited and plodded along trying to get that project going. I'm pretty sure it will happen this year, but it's still kind of moving forward. Then Wood End and 435, as you know, we've kind of talked about that project and that site and kind of assembling all that, see how that kind of comes together. We're still working with some folks. We've got some development discussions underway about what that will take. It is a very challenging site just to get it assembled. the access to that site, the probably need for a stoplight there with the FedEx folks and Wood End. I'd say, you know, that's an interesting location because it's the last point out of the county and then the first one in. And so how does that interact with your parks and trails? You have a lot of land right there that's not developable, and yet it's part of what's on the market. So it's a challenging site, but you all are at least aware of that site and the challenges. And so I'm certain that based on the team, we'll be able to pull something together. It's just a matter of time at this point. The existing business retention, I can't overstate that, you know, now we are a target for companies to be, you know, stolen and moved out. The only good news in any of that is that when companies, and we've got one in the industrial park that we know will be relocating, is that those buildings are still in tax rolls, and often the companies coming in are better wages, maybe more people. In the case of Babtech, that was a good example of a company that, you know, really came in from Lenexa, came in with, you know, 75 really good paying wages, put a lot of good investment in that building, and now we have an even better company there. So it's good, can be good. And then the Compass Business Park, again, I know it's not inside the city limits, but it's very important to you all how that turns out and how that develops. But also keeping in mind what the market is driving, as well as the infrastructure capacities in that location around wastewater. So it's always a balancing act. And then ongoing, so we talked about Hard Rock, 110th Street, I-70 corridor generally, so that's a high priority for you all, it's a high priority for us. That will pick up steam this year, now that Cadence is on board. On that whole K32 corridor, so we've got a number of smaller parcels through there that we really would like to see kind of develop. It's a question of what those are and how do you tie it all together so that it looks like it belongs together and not just a hodgepodge. And that's key to Michael and us to make sure that we do that and find the right projects and the right quality. Downtown marketing as a whole, so this will change along with Ross development here at City Hall. Residential development, so this is one that we've started to have a little bit more of here recently. We've got some other meetings, I think, coming up where we'll talk about what that looks like. There's at least one residential developer who wants to be in that K7 435 corridor. They've largely been in K7, but I think there's some interest in being in this area, particularly because they know that you all are easy to work with and would be excited about some good quality residential. We like them as well, so it might be a good fit. Infrastructure will be a challenge when we get down that path because they are going to want that to be in place. That's partly what stymied some residential development, even in Piper, is making sure that sewer and all the infrastructure is in place. Riverview improvements, so we were just talking about Riverview. That will hinder us long term if Michael doesn't have the ability to tell a developer, yes, we're good with improving that road, even if it is just up to where it ends now, but at least to the bridge or slightly beyond.
And to clarify, that wasn't as much as of a concern that I've heard as to connecting to all the way down to Turner Diagonal, that into Kansas City, Kansas, and making that.
I think, yeah, as long as we can get to, what is 94th that gets to, as long as we get to there, I think we're in pretty good shape. We'll worry about KCK another day. We'll get what we can get. And then that north-south connectivity to Kansas Avenue, because we do need at some point to determine which of those north-south routes you all really want to be improved, because that will begin to line up how developments come into the community where we really focus our marketing efforts. Because I'd say that today there is a couple of different options. We really need to look at that 435 location and determine where it is that we want to see and what kind of development you want there. Because there, obviously, logistics, like industrial, is hugely strong right now, but I don't think we have firm guidance on whether that's what you want there. And if we did do that, you'd almost have to come from the KCK side because of the way the sewer comes through there and work your way back towards 435. So there's two cities that need to be engaged in that conversation. And then, I just mentioned Kansas Avenue and utilities.
Greg, has there been any preliminary discussions with KDOT at all about Riverview over 435? That, you know, eventually, as development takes place, it's a pretty narrow bridge in reality. And I don't know if there's been any preliminary discussions thrown
We haven't
anything on
yet,
the table with that.
but we can reach out to our point of contact and get KDOT if we kind of have a general idea of what the capacity needs will be and what we want future improvements to be as well.
I think relative to KDOT, broadly. So the interchange of 435 and I-70, and as it relates to State Avenue, that corridor. So there's been a couple of studies done fairly recently in the last decade about do you continue with the design as it is today, right? You have to go over and come back around the cloverleaf designs versus designs that would be, if you're going north on 435 and you wanted to go to the west on I-70, a carryover type. That then changes what that bridge, that area would look like. Now, those have been more conceptual discussions, and again, part of it is because of how State Avenue then also, you know, they're so close relatively from a highway planning standpoint that some of that started with discussions about how do you look at the interchange at State Avenue and 435 State Avenue as you get into the Speedway area and some of those discussions which you all have seen. And so then it went back and started looking at I-70, 435, I-70, 110. How does all that work together, right? Because, I mean, you drive around town and, I mean, right, it's the same with what happened at the Grandview Triangles or happened down in Johnson County at the 435, K10. I mean, those kind of things, you can't just do one intersection or one on-off ramp. You're looking at it in a broader. So there have been some, what I would call large regional planning around that, but not necessarily, here we're gonna build this off-ramp right here, and it's gonna happen on this date and time. So they've been broader discussions, not specific to, you're right, I mean, Riverview Bridge is a two-lane only bridge. So if you're ever trying to build anything beyond roughly a two-lane road, that's where it becomes a challenge. That's been our challenge when you think about 98th Street is a great north-south, but if I want to try to go east-west, then I'm limited by the bridge, which is why when we looked at Kansas Avenue and 102nd Street, it gives that flow up to Riverview. So it's a bottleneck, but it's a point where, you know, we're talking long-term planning. That is one of those things, and of course, building a second bridge. Because I think originally, from my understanding, talking to some folk way back when, that was kind of the concept, was there'd be a two-lane bridge and later on there'd be a second two-lane bridge. Well, now there's been houses built and stuff built and, you know, and building bridges over interstates is expensive.
That's a long bridge.
That's a long bridge, it is a long bridge, so.
I mentioned workforce, so we are tracking much closer on the median household income. So when we first started tracking it back in 2015, we were 95th out of 105 counties. In the last 3 years, we've been able to move that to 66th. Now that is good news, don't get me wrong. Our goal is to get it to that of the state. The state is average across the country in terms of wages. So in some ways, we're striving to be average. But the other piece is that 89 out of 105 counties are considered rural in the state of Kansas. Most of those counties, their economies are going to stay pretty flat, have been flat, will remain flat for the most part. And so we should be seeing this number tick up as we do a better job of connecting residents to the jobs and trying to figure out ways to make sure that folks get into the skills that we need to fill these jobs. Work with our school districts as well to make sure that they're training kids for the jobs we have in this community. We have one of the highest wages, right? We're either first in the state in terms of wages paid, or we're third. And this year, I think we're third. Last year, we were first. So a county that's had the kind of billions of dollars in investments and that pays the kind of wages that we pay should not have the level of poverty that we also have. So it's we're working through this. This is not something that I would say that we are subject matter experts on. We've become sort of grassroots involved, and by just necessity, are we getting to learn more and more about how to do this and how to talk to our companies about it. Transit is an issue, childcare is an issue, language is an issue, making sure kids have those certificates before they even come out of high school is an issue. These are all areas that are probably not necessarily rocket science, but how you do it isn't as easy as it seems, and a lot of it is incredibly expensive. So if you're making $30,000 a year, which is $15 an hour, but your child care costs $1,000 a month for one child, you're not going to a full-day, high-quality child care facility. And that doesn't mean that using parents or anybody else is bad, but those kids have got to be ready for not just kindergarten, but to be honest, what we used to have to learn by the time of kindergarten, these kids really need to know by the age of 3. Because if they're not caught up by the time they're in the 2nd and 3rd grade, the research suggests that they will probably never catch back up. And with the automation and technology that we're experiencing in our companies, these kids have got to be able to use these things long before they get to kindergarten. So we've got to do more to connect our folks. So that's why you're hearing us talk a lot about jobs and workforce solutions and working a lot more with schools because it's imperative that we make sure these kids are ready for the jobs that we've got. This is a snapshot of you all, in case you didn't know, because it's you all. Your all's wages here, the median household income is much higher than the county average. You're higher than the state. You're below the poverty rate that we have in the county as a whole. But we look at the county as a whole generally. But I do think it's important for you all to see how you all situate. Your educational attainment is higher as well. The one thing I would note is the home values. So half the homes are valued between 100 and 200,000. As you know, as we move forward, you can't build a house for probably less than 300, 350. 300 is probably the least, but depending on the cost of infrastructure, you're going to be pushing that number a little higher. So that will definitely have an effect on what groups we are able to market to, and that'll have an effect on our ability to talk to residential developers when they look at what we have currently and what we're going to need to be. That moves the market a little bit, so that will require some conversation about how we make sure we reduce that risk for those developers when they start coming in. And this last slide really, this just kind of lays out, and it's more of a black and white kind of our relationship. And it depends on the project, depends on the day, depends on what Michael tells me to do.
I don't tell you anything. Let you do
Michael is very demanding. Very demanding. All right, that's it. Thank you all. Any questions?
Great, thank you very much.
Would you
Go ahead, if
mind
you got questions.
sending the slides to my email?
Mhm.
I think
Sure.
that was really helpful information.
No, absolutely.
You'll probably need a PDF because it's a
Yeah, we've got it in the PDF, send it out.
Thank you.
And we'll probably, quite honestly, and we have in the past, like the demographic page is really a nice page. And we've used that in the past, plug it into our website, and we have some connections in there for, community development. I would like to say, I mean, Greg, we have a standing meeting every month, and we often meet more than that, but I mean, they really do a good job, and I don't think I can overemphasize this issue around workforce development, daycare, that piece. I was out in Dodge City for a conference, and I didn't realize daycare was so complicated, right? I mean, if you don't have enough of this age in that daycare, that 0 to 4, and some of these bills about doing all-day daycare at 5, I mean, sounds like a great idea, but it has such a negative impact on the funding because, the most expensive child is the newborns, right, the under 1, and somewhat the least expensive is the 4 to 5. Well, if you take the 4 to 5-year-olds out of the mix, and you're still charging the same amount, you don't have the money to do it, and then trying to find facilities that meet the standards that they can get certain federal, help or state or federal type of things, and if you think, hey, let's build it as big as we can. Oh no, 59 is kind of this magic number. 50, I think, you don't want to be at 60 because now you got to add like 10 staff people. I really didn't understand how complicated that piece of it is. And I think, and I know we've talked about how we can be partners in that. So how could you engage daycare into parks and recreational activities? And we talked about, so if the people that are coming to work in our town are making $15, $18 an hour, and they have a place their child can come here, so they're on the way to work at any one of our number of places, and they're not having to drive to Leavenworth or wherever it is that they have to, they can come on their way to work, bring their child, and maybe they're working 6 a.m. to 2 p.m. But we have activities that maybe that child can stay with us from 2 to 5 or 6. Well, maybe that parent also has an opportunity to go work on a community college education, and they can do classes in the afternoon, because now their child has another place and another activity. And it helps us as a community, because now those kids can be engaged in our parks program, in our recreation programs, and we can, it can be a big win-win, but it is far more complicated than I really thought, and I think Greg's team really jumped into that piece of it. And so the old days of just going out and finding sites and selling buildings and everybody's happy, and that's still a piece of it, but it's far more complicated. So I appreciate the work y'all are doing.
I have two questions. First, when does the money get counted in the development numbers?
When the project is announced. So once you all have approved an abatement, or you've approved the project, or it's gone through the planning commission process, that's when we will announce it. So that's why you have not seen us announce an ag direct, because it hasn't technically been through the full public process.
And the second question, I've heard from several people in some of the networking things I do that there's a tremendous need for office space. Not, a corporate woods kind of an environment where people can have some smaller, that serve all the other businesses in the area, the larger businesses, especially with like the American Oil coming in. There'll be ancillary businesses, small office needs.
The space that Michael and I were just talking about is probably not corporate woods, but it's the Plaza West stuff, right?
Yeah,
So
but I
you've
mean,
got-
it's that style of it.
Yeah. I think our biggest challenge with office, frankly, is the Sprint campus, because you can get that space at a very reasonable price, where a new space, costs you $30 a foot or better to lease. But that flex use, that smaller to mid-size flex use size, is really, we don't have much of it. And we don't have, what we do have, isn't always in the locations that we would like it to be. This area really could use more flex use, for sure.
I think some of and there's a name, so there are companies out there where a person, has a company, and they buy a building, or they have a building, and they have 10,000 square feet, 5 to 10,000. And what they're doing then is they're basically subleasing. So you're a sole proprietor business person, but I need a place that I can go have an office. I need a place that has kind of a full-time staff that can answer the phone and maybe make copies and get stuff out. I can bring people in for a small conference. I think that kind of need is probably higher, or that's a space that there's not a lot of it around, at least in our part of
Well, and
this
we'll
county.
have the small convention space that
Right.
would really work well ancillary to that. So those local or regional offices can host larger events on a periodic basis. So but I have heard that from a number of people in Wyandotte County that have small businesses or service-oriented financial advisors, that type of thing, that just really don't have any place to go that's a real professional type of an environment.
And I think that's
Probably
part
the
of,
rates that they want to pay.
Well, that too, yeah.
I think that's part of the market we're looking at here, right? Is when we look at that space and we think about, so if we don't have an attorney, an accountant, any number of those professional realtors, right? I mean, where would you get space here today? It doesn't exist. I think that's part of what the town centerpiece can do, and where we can be part of that, because we can somewhat control some of those costs in a positive way. So you're not paying $30 a square foot. What if it's at 15 to 18 or 18 to 20? What does that do? And I think that'll be some of the discussions we have around. So what does it look like outside of the public space here, right? Residential housing, office, some retail, right? I mean, we're not going to do big boxes, but you want a place to eat, or you want to have a Pizza Hut delivery, or the restaurants we had did fairly well. I mean, the Chinese restaurant there, I don't know how many people ate at the restaurant, but I think they did a lot of carry out and people delivering and stuff like that. I think hissing now, so.
Do you have a second question?
No, those were two questions.
Okay, great, thank you very much. Okay, next item on the agenda will be consider ordinance number 1028, amending the code of the city of Edwardsville, Kansas, chapter 15, public ways and properties.
Mr. Mayor, members of council, I'm going to focus on 3 areas as it relates to the next 2 items. We'll kind of tackle them in tandem. The first being the background of what the recommended action is. The second being what the actual ordinance would do if it's adopted tonight. And then the third being what the new duties would be of this kind of new concept that we're putting forth to this board. So as far as the background is concerned, for a number of years, the cemetery board was comprised of volunteer members appointed by the mayor that essentially handled all the components of the management, operations, administrative duties, everything having to do within the cemetery. Over a number, and this included selling the graves, coordinating with funeral homes, managing the mowing contract, things like that. Over the last couple of years, some of those operational duties have shifted over to the city staff. So like tonight, we handled the mowing contract, some of the tree trimming stuff, capital projects, things like that. But the administrative duties of the board, speaking with funeral homes, selling plots, things like that, were still handled by the volunteer members of that board. Late last year, we had some resignations from the cemetery board that kind of presented the opportunity to expedite the shift from a operational board that the cemetery board had, that role that they had filled, into more of a policy-minded group. Pretty similar to how our parks board has come together. Now, going back, even further, I believe both the cemetery and the Parks and Rec had their own dedicated funding source, and as those went away, that's when some of those administrative duties for both of those areas kind of shifted over to the administrative city hall staff. That's been that way for a number of years for the Parks Board, where they're focused on policies, programming, reviewing fees, and things like that, not really that concerned with the minutia of the mowing and the utilities and things like that. Now, with the recent resignations of 2 cemetery board members, we saw an opportunity there to kind of increase the efficiency of our volunteer community bodies and kind of streamline both of those processes into essentially a single board. What this ordinance would do if it's adopted, so right now in our code, we've got language enabling both the Parks Board and the Cemetery Board. The Cemetery Board code language, the Cemetery Board is created via state statute, so in order to, if we wanted to eliminate the Cemetery Board, which we don't want to do, there's a number of hoops we would need to jump through that aren't really that financially feasible, and it's, really the end result isn't that we want to get rid of the Cemetery Board. So what this ordinance would do is eliminate the Parks Board in its current incarnation and expand the purview, scope, and membership of the Cemetery Board and rename it the Cemetery, Parks, and Public Spaces Board. So the CPPS Board is what the shorthand for that is. What this board would actually do would really focus on kind of a handful of things, those being policies, so policies for, different, whether we require, what we require as far as burials and monuments go in the cemetery. Larger projects, so we'll be, we're still working through a number of the areas of the Parks Master Plan had identified last year. We're at different steps with a couple of those projects that this board would be involved in on the front end as far as making recommendations to the city council to move forward or not move forward with this or that. Events, so Autumn Fest, Memorial Day services, Veterans Day services, the planning and the organization behind those, and then the different fees and charges related to the services in both the park programming side of it, and then as far as reviewing fees and charges for selling burial plots. So we would shift the duties of the cemetery board to focus more on those things and less on some of the administrative duties, such as maintaining the database of of the actual, the map of the cemetery, selling those grave sites, coordinating with funeral homes, getting contracts in place for digging services, mowing services, things like that. So we have kind of ran this concept through both. We introduced it to the ex officio members and the current presidents of both the cemetery board and the parks board. That group had some input which we incorporated into this ordinance, but largely had really had some buy-in for the concept. Once we took that input from that group and we brought that to the kind of assembled bodies of the parks and cemetery boards and kind of introduced what the membership would look like and what their duties would be. Everybody who we have spoke to, so every member of the current boards were on board with it. So the next step would be to, if this ordinance were to be adopted, would be to consider the mayor's appointments to the board. Right now, so the board would consist of not less than 7 members, because that is part of the state statute as it relates to cemetery, the makeup of cemetery boards. The inaugural membership of this board would be 8 members, made up of the 4 current members of the cemetery board, and then the 4 resident members of the Parks and Rec Advisory Board. So we would actually be losing one of our members of the Parks and Rec Advisory Board because he is a Potter Springs resident. When he was initially appointed, the city council essentially waived that requirement because he's pretty involved in the parks programming as a referee and a coach, and he's got kids in the programming and all that. So he'll still, we're not losing him as a stakeholder in our Parks and Rec organization. He'll still be around, but he's not going to maintain his position on the board. But even he was supportive of this action. So we've kind of laid out the terms of what the incoming board would look like. 2 members would have a term of 1 year, 3 members would have a term of 2 years, and 3 members would have a term of 3 years. And then after the expiration of all those terms, they would each be reappointed, or each of those spots would be reappointed for a period of 3, so it'd be kind of staggered. Like I said, we ran this through both boards. We've got buy-in for this concept. We think it's going to increase the efficiency of both those boards, and for both areas, really just continue that momentum as far as projects, firming policies, things like that in this year and beyond. So if you have specific questions about this, then we would be open to that.
I would just note too, so we currently have a council member for each of those 2 boards, and our recommendation and the discussions which they were both part of would be that both the council members would continue to be a council liaison on here. So we would have 2 council liaisons. If at a later date decide to change that, at least in this initial recommendation, and those are Councilmember Shriver and Councilmember Adams serve on those 2 boards, and that's been the discussion. So we're really trying to keep as much of the existing body that's there included into the new one as we work through this process. To add that.
Who would be handling the business of selling the lots and working with the funeral homes?
So that would be our city hall staff. So since the resignation of those 2 members that I mentioned from the cemetery board, we've already assumed those. So we handle it. I mean, it's not incredibly complicated, and it's probably it's involved software and computer, laptop stuff that really should be housed in City Hall anyway. So the city staff would assume that.
So it's not an open, you guys are doing it.
Input 4, so if the cemetery, so if they sold a plot while there was a cemetery board member, all the cash part, so the person writes a check for that plot, it still had to come here to go through the cash system, and any expenses to pay still are coming through our financial system. So from that standpoint, it may actually be less work in the sense of it's all handled at one time. And so from that standpoint, it's streamlined.
And there is a savings on the cemetery side of about $3,500. So we're in that neighborhood with the administrative costs and some of the other things. So there is pretty significant savings from that standpoint. I can speak from sitting in on the cemetery board meetings that the board is very amenable to this, and that in some ways, it really takes a lot of burden off of their shoulders, having to manage the day-to-day operations. And it's really two different things. Some of the members of our the cemetery board have been on there for decades, and been very faithful and loyal and done a great job, but they're not able to do the things they used to, because they used to do a lot of the manual labor themselves. And I think any volunteer organization, whether it's a faith-based or community-based, whatever it is, we tell you volunteers are very hard to come by. And so by coordinating these two together, it's going to be some pretty nice synergy, because we're really looking at the public spaces in Edwardsville, all the way from the cemetery to the right-of-ways and things like that we'll be looking at. And so I know from the cemetery side that it's a pretty positive move, that they're a little bit of apprehensions because it's different, but I think it's very they're looking forward to a little lighter load and focusing more on policy type of decisions.
Right, yeah, it'd be lighter load in the sense of they're not, looking at the bank statements and approving those every single month. And they're not, they're not making time out of their schedule to handle the meeting a family out and selling a grave, or trying to organize this cleanup or that cleanup. That's really it has always been the city's function to handle that, so this kind of.
I think there'll be opportunities for projects and so forth that we can involve the community in.
Correct.
And get a broader involvement in Parks and Rec and the cemetery maintenance.
I think a good example of that recently has been, in addition to some of the mowing contracted oversight being shifted over to the Public Works Department, is those cleanups that we've been able to organize at the Stony Point Cemetery. Those kind of, focusing their efforts on those kind of, it's their policy to, and they're kind of, one of their stated priorities to kind of reintroduce that as a part of the community. And now they've got more of an opportunity to actually focus on those rather than, scheduling a digger to come out to handle 6 grave restorations or something like that, which Public Works and has been handling for a couple of months now.
I will agree with Chuck. Park and Recs board members were excited and agreement. We've got one sitting in the back right here tonight too. I think it's going to be enlightening. It already has been enlightening.
And at the same time, where the cemetery board does do a really good job at is consistency in their meeting schedule, which is something that the Parks Board, but they've met kind of on an as-needed basis and for an update as it relates to the project. They meet consistently, but the cemetery board has a standing meeting that that's going to benefit the Parks side of things too, to keep momentum in the project moving forward. So for this to go through, I think the idea is to schedule this meeting of this group on the second Wednesday of the month, just a standing meeting every single month.
I make a motion to adopt ordinance number 1028, amending the code of City of Edwardsville, Edwardsville, Kansas, chapter 15, public ways and property. And do you need the additional part on there, if adopted? Right. Okay.
Second.
It has been moved and seconded to approve the ordinance number 1028, amending the code of the City of Edwardsville, Kansas, chapter 15, public ways and property. Would the clerk please call roll?
Shriver?
Yes.
Stites?
Yes.
Adams?
Yes.
Cahar?
Yes.
Malat?
Yes.
We need a motion to
Approve the
appointments.
appointments.
I make a motion to approve the Mayor McTaggart's appointments to the Cemetery, Parks, and Public Spaces Board, otherwise known as CPPSB.
Second.
I'm not gonna repeat all of it. But anyway, it has been moved and seconded to approve the mayor's appointments to the Cemetery, Parks, Public Spaces Board. Would the clerk please call roll?
Shriver?
Yes.
Stites?
Yes.
Adams?
Yes.
Cahar?
Yes.
Malat?
Yes.
Thank you.
Yes.
Okay, Chuck, we're gonna start with you.
You're not
Wait a minute.
Staff first?
Oh, I'm sorry.
Well, I'm not. I mean, if you want to start,
Yeah.
whatever you like. You know, Katie
I'm
started
sorry,
15
Mike.
minutes ago. I'll wrap it up quick.
I'll keep them quick. Some follow-up from our meetings tonight. 435 in Wood End, I will say we've been having some discussions around those overall sites with property owners and potential developers. I think, as Greg said, it has lots of challenges. If it was an easy one, it probably would have been developed like everything else out there, but it stays on our radar. Magni, if you've been by their site, I had somebody go and say, they look like they dug a bunch of big holes big enough to put trucks in. Well, what they're doing is that there's gonna be detention ponds there, and they're doing some of their soil type testing. They've made a few modifications to their overall site plan, building plans, nothing that requires it to go back to the planning commission. We do expect that they'll be coming forward, hopefully in the fairly near future as it relates to the IRBs. I don't remember if we did a resolution a year or so ago on that one, but we're at that point. We'll do the public hearing and the IRBs related to that project. I think they've been trying to make sure they got their numbers right, and I will say, if anything, they definitely watch the nickels on that project. So the owner of the business, you know, it's an Italian business. He definitely watches it. You know, I think last time when we were having some discussions about the year-end reports, and we talked about the sewer fund and, you know, fund balance and why we had it, well, I'll tell you why we have it. We went down to one pump here a couple of days ago, had to rewire some others, and then another piece broke today, and, you know, we're probably gonna spend $5,000 here this week on that lift, on the big lift station, just in maintenance repairs. Thankfully, we have a person on staff that's doing it. But I mean, it's just one of those things where, you know, everything was running along just perfectly, and now all of a sudden, you know, we've had contractors have to come out, and some of that stuff is critical pieces, and you can't have that pump station go down because, as it is today, everything in this city that's sewer flows through that lift station. So it's a very critical component. So that's why we keep balances. I'm very glad I started looking, and I know it's going to be expensive. We are switching over, I think I told you this, to a pay system called Paycor. That becomes more of an electronic pay system. You all should have gotten your first checks. One of the things is the way that is, it'll be, as I sent out, I think it's the first Friday of each month, so you're kind of in your own thing. You'll be able to go on, and we can help you if you want to see pay stubs or any of those kind of things relative to you. We can help you do all that stuff. And then the last thing, maybe Zach will highlight this more, but the chamber event is this Friday. So I know last I heard, I think they have 140 people. 150 people reserved for that now. I will say is the businesses that we interact with here in this city have been very good supporters of our chamber and our chamber event through their sponsorships and activities. And so it's nice to know that the businesses we interact with are also part of our community through things such as our chamber of commerce.
But just coming to see Zach oversee the
To
meeting.
speak, that's it. So Zach is our outgoing incoming president, so one way or the other, I'm not sure which.
Long way out.
He said yes again, or wasn't there. I don't remember what called. I'm ex officio, so I don't ever get to be the president, thankfully. I'm good with that. So.
One thing in the email, it didn't say the time. What time is the time?
The cocktail hour starts at 5:30. I think the dinner will probably start at
6:30.
Or 6:30, yes, and then speaker comments.
Yeah, there's a few speaker comments in the meeting, so if you haven't reserved, please let us know ASAP.
We've got plenty of space.
Yeah, we have people there, so. It's a little bigger. I think last year it was probably around 100 there.
A little less than 120, yeah, I would say 150, so we'll be bigger.
So that's a lot larger.
The fuel house is on.
Where's that on that?
I think it's, you know, of course, I think probably having a person who's related to the Kansas City Chiefs as our guest speaker certainly helps out too. But I think a lot of people are becoming more and more engaged in the chancellor. Unless I will say that, I think I told you, 4th Street, letters went out this week related to these easements. Again, pretty much that project, it's all temporary easements, 5 feet wide by the width of a lot. So there's no property takings or any of those kind of things really. Also, those properties, the Riverview properties, have been contacted through our companies that are handling that and arranging for the appraisal process, which we kind of, we stand back from that because, that's an independent process. So, but those are out there too. So if you hear people say, hey, I got a letter, I got this, yes, that's going on there as well. So projects keep moving forward. I do want to say, I'll hit Public Works where I'm at it. I have interviews
yeah.
scheduled for Friday and Monday for candidates for the Public Works Director. I have 2 people that are serving with me on that. Our city engineer and another outside party. So we'll be doing those, and hopefully, if those go well, we'll be able to make an offer here and have our new Public Works Director in place. Probably March, April, or these things go. They always take longer with
Zach?
Just real
Lead
quick,
in.
this is the last week to sign up for youth soccer, so if you've not done that, or if you have people who have not done that yet, please let them know. 2020 utility rates will go into effect at the next utility billing, which should be out at the beginning of next week, beginning to middle of next week. These are some pictures from, we're doing some improvements over at the concession stand. New paint job, new stalls, new sink. They've cleared out a bunch of space in one of the sheds, so they're in this kind of, not down period, but this is a good time to get some of those projects done. And then just to put it on your radar for the next meeting, we'll probably be having our year-end reviews at the first meeting in March for the 2019 data. So, for you to be aware of. That's all I have.
Okay, thank you, Zach. Chief and Thief.
We had 2 significant graduations. First, Officer Jennifer Richner graduated from KLATC. She was class president, gave the commencement speech, first in our history. Did an excellent job, great athletics, and the academics were pretty sharp. We got a lot of compliments. She did a great job on the speech. And then we have a new officer, Officer Bear. It's a German Shepherd, black color. If you haven't seen it, they graduated the same day as Officer Richner. And they came back from Denver, Indiana. And they're happy to be home because it was -3 a lot there, apparently. It was very cold, but they're happy to be home. Peter Yazbek will start. He's off today, shifted around his time. He starts 4 to midnight is our first segment, but he's already been training in the metro area. He has one more segment in our local area to complete some training with the dog and things. It's not a show and tell dog. That's not what it's young enough, and it was so used to being where it was that when it comes in the building, even the police department wants to sniff doors and go find things and do this. So there's some acclimation that's happening in this period, next couple of weeks, but it'll start 4 to midnight, I believe, tomorrow, and we're going to see how the best scheduling goes from there. But they did great. The dog is very athletic and was praised, highly praised. We really have a great investment, and we have a few just minor things here and there that we need to cages, some of this kind of stuff that we're moving forward with. So we're happy to have him, and he's happy to be back. So we'll have a picture maybe for you next time. We have some that just turn out very well. The dog is always moving, so
It's very active.
very active.
Thank you, Chief. Chief Whittle.
The only thing, we have conveyed an offer to a new firefighter paramedic. He accepted. Him and his family will be moving back to Kansas. He should be on duty somewhere around the middle of May, and then he will leave and depart for the fire academy. Probably do it over here at Johnson County Community College first part of next year. So we have filled that last open full-time spot. It's just, they're coming from right outside of Austin, Texas, Lubbock, Texas.
Best country in the nation.
Don't listen to that part. But we actually sat there this time and went out on Indeed, and that's how he found us and the opportunity to come back. His wife is originally from the Shawnee, Lenexa area. He grew up a military brat, so they bounced around. They've been here before. They left about 2 years ago. This was an opportunity for them to come back. So we kind of worked with him a tad bit to allow the transition for a couple months move to get back here in the area and close out their lease that was on their apartment that expired in May. So JT will be here with no problems with the drug screening physical. Should be starting about the middle of May.
Chief, thank you. Lisa, anything? Okay, now Chuck, you can do it. Thank you for reminding me.
That's all right.
Yeah.
First off, Commissioner and Greg, thanks for coming out and taking the time. It's important to us to get that feedback of what's happening and your guys' input as what's happening, what's going on, and how we might be able to help work with you guys as we move forward with projects. Other than that, thanks, sir. That's it.
Thank you. Margaret?
I'll repeat the same, Jim and Greg, thank you very much. And I think it was an excellent suggestion by Chuck and Jim, if you'd come out quarterly, that would be wonderful. I've already thought of 3 or 4 different questions. You know, Woodlands come to mind, so anyway.
Sure.
I'm sure there's a lot more going on, but those are very exciting, what's going on in the county and our city as well, so. And I'm excited to see pictures. Is Bear a female or male?
Male.
Oh, I thought you said female. I thought you said her.
I may have. It's like a ship, right? So-
Right. Well, good. So, and I'm glad you said no show and tell. I was gonna ask
Yeah.
where to come in.
We're not ready for that yet.
Right. That's all I have.
Good. Thank you.
Third guy gets to echo. Thank you
Mhm.
too for coming out. And the quarterly, I like the idea of the quarterly. Wouldn't mind the 6-month, the bi-yearly maybe on the Wyandotte economic development. A lot of information came out today that I really wasn't aware of, and it might be my own fault that I'm not, but it's sure nice to get that at that podium like that. I appreciate it very much. I want to request that we do get some street lights up there on 32 Highway. I think at $18 a month for rent for them, I think that'd be well worth it to be proactive on maybe not having some kind of an accident up there. So that's just what I want to do. I think we should.
We'll bring it back for future council.
Yeah, however you do that. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you. Carolyn?
Congratulations to the reappointments on the new CPPS board. I was thinking that might be a great opportunity to really just promote that group on social media. Not only just in congratulating them, but maybe to inspire new community involvement in volunteering and cleaning up and the beautification of Edwardsville. It could go along with our right-of-way cleanups, the adopt a block, or fixing up parks. I've been to a couple of the meetings, and it's really just the people on the board generally that are there, and so I just thought it might be a good kickstart to say, hey, we're starting something new, and maybe just encourage some community involvement there and get a database of volunteers that might help out. And then thank you to Commissioner Walters and Mr. Kindle for coming out again. Same sentiment, but we appreciate your time and giving those updates.
Ditto, number 5, click on that. Up on the corner of 110th and whatever the road is that they're at the corner of the raceway, where the memorial is, the temporary memorial around the light post. Has anyone considered approaching the speedway to put something a little bit more permanent, maybe back off the road a little bit, but a really nice, honorable memorial for that officer that would be maintained by the speedway? It would be I get the temporary stuff, but I have a feeling it's not going to be temporary, and it's in the right of way, which technically is not a good place for it. It'd be beautiful to see a nice memorial in that area for that officer, for his sacrifice for our community.
Yeah, good idea.
I don't know if anybody has connections to somebody at the raceway that they could suggest that.
I can pass that along.
I would appreciate it. I think he deserves it. His family deserves it. That's all I have.
Is it? Okay. Once again, gentlemen, thank you very much. We really appreciate you coming and sharing with us, and look forward into the future having you come back.
Great, thank you.
And with that, more to Richard.